Okay. Hello.
Good girl. That's my girl.
Hi, welcome back to my channel. Here's the thing about me. First of all, I know that it's been a little bit of time since I've uploaded. I'm very sorry about that. I was busy getting married, and I severely underestimated how even having a small wedding would take like pretty much every ounce of energy that I had to like muster in a day. So anyways, enough about me. Hope you guys are doing well. Do you guys ever just like watch a reality television show and feel like, wow, I really need to fucking talk about that with somebody, and anybody else who is in my life has probably more of a balanced sense of priorities and they don't want to sit down and talk for an hour about the same thing, so you have to like make a video on your channel to talk about said reality television show? Because that's how I feel about Traitors Season 3 US. Spoiler alert! Spoiler! Spoiler! If you have not seen through Season 3 of the Traitors US, and without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so if you are new to my channel, hi, hello, my name is Megan. By day, I'm an attorney, and by night, I make videos about film and television shows that I find to be interesting. Just looking ahead very quickly for my channel moving forward, obviously I'm, releasing this review of Traitors Season 3 because you're watching it on YouTube currently. I don't know why I had to specify that. After that, I'm going to be releasing my highly anticipated, long-awaited autopsy of Season 4 of Only Murders in the Building. Yes, highly anticipated and long-awaited to, like, my parents, I guess, my husband. After that, I'm going to just delve into the different suggestions you guys have left in my comment section from some of my other uploads and my community posts comment section, because you guys left a lot of really great suggestions of TV shows that I want to cover. I also there's a lot of things that are coming out in 2025 that I already have a lot of fucking opinions about. If you want to hear me talk about some shit, then just please feel free to comment, subscribe, let me know what you want me to talk about, and yeah. Welcome. Let's talk about Traitors Season 3. Now, I very famously said that I was going to cover this show as it was getting released from January to March in installments of like every other week, and then I just very famously did not do that. I really fully intended to talk about Traitors as it was getting released, because when the first couple episodes came out, I was very excited about this season, and then as it progressed, I became progressively more frustrated with this season. It was a little bit of a struggle to cover it as it was being released, but I think now I've had the appropriate distance from it to sit down and actually discuss it in its entirety. What exactly happened in Season 3 of Traitors that is making me want to make this video? Like, how did everything resolve? We started off this season with 4 traitors. We had RuPaul's Drag Race, Bob the Drag Queen. We had Boston Rob of basically any sort of competitive reality television show that you've ever seen in your life. We had Carolyn of Survivor, and then we also had Danielle from Big Brother. Towards the end of the season, when there was like 6 contestants left, Danielle was the last remaining traitor, and she decided to recruit Brittany and give her an ultimatum of either getting murdered or joining her as a traitor. Brittany, who had known Danielle from their season of Big Brother together, I guess there was some sort of like thing where Danielle got put in a hamster wheel and had to like run on said hamster wheel, but it was like a Christmas themed hamster wheel, and it was at Brittany's doing, and that resulted in Danielle getting eliminated. I really don't understand Big Brother. I've tried watching. I don't understand it. But they had beef, but then they became friends, and that's why she recruited Brittany. However, at the end of the second to last episode, there was a tie between Ivor, who is a faithful, and Danielle as to who's going to go home. Brittany decided to change her vote and vote for Danielle, if anything, just to make herself look less suspicious to the remaining faithfuls, and Danielle once again got sent home at the hand of her former nemesis, Brittany. Now, I think at this point, our remaining faithfuls, who consisted of Ivor, aka a British lord or something like that, sure, good for him, Gabby Windy of the Bachelorette franchise, Dylan Efron of being related to Zac Efron, and Dolores from the Real Housewives of New Jersey. I think they were all kind of like familiar enough with each other and confident enough in the fact that they were all faithfuls to know that Brittany was the one that was the traitor. Rather than trying to like eliminate additional faithfuls for selfish reasons and getting more money from the prize pot, they decided they wanted to just split it 4 ways, and they all won like $30,000. It's a lot of money, of course, but like they got like maggots and crickets and like millipedes dropped on their heads at one point in this competition. I would probably demand at least 6 figures for that, but whatever, good for them. Here's the thing about this season. The traitors sucked, the faithful sucked, and I think we are now seeing the enormous weaknesses that come with casting only reality TV contestants on this franchise. And I'm going to be discussing all of these in detail. As a result, the combination of issues in all 3 of these categories, I think, exposed a lot of weaknesses for this franchise. So I want to start by talking about the traitors in general. This season's traitors was probably the most dysfunctional group of adults trying to work towards a collective goal that I've ever seen in my 29 years of existence. And I'm a lawyer who went to law school with a lot of of people with very big egos. You can only imagine the horrors that I have witnessed, and yet somehow this was worse. I will say that the group of individuals they selected as traitors to start off this season, I was actually very optimistic that they were going to be great, because I think they all have different personalities, different strategic perspectives that they could provide. But then after seeing them talk for like more than 10 to 15 seconds, it became abundantly clear that this was like the most dysfunctional group project that has ever existed in the history of mankind. Everybody hated each other. I think Danielle and Bob the Drag Queen were cool with each other a little bit, but everybody else was like declaring war by episode 6. Nobody was listening to each other. There was no coherent communication. There was no listening. There was no strategy that anybody could agree on. I think they just fundamentally didn't like each other as human beings, it seemed. And as a result, it turned into this personality, like dick measuring contest. It was really bad. I want to talk about the traitors individually because, one particular traitor did get a lot of flack online. Danielle has been the subject of many an article, many a tweet, many a subreddit about her performance this season, and I'm going to talk about it. Oh, you bet your ass I will talk about it. But I want to talk about everybody's fuck-ups as a traitor because she was certainly not the only one. I'm not going to sit here and say that she was the best traitor. She did make it the furthest, but I'm not going to sit here and say that it was, due in part to her good performance. But I also want to acknowledge the fact that there were other traitors, all of the traitors in fact, that did very critically bad things that resulted in them getting eliminated. So talking first about Bob the Drag Queen, Bob the Drag Queen got eliminated second or third. No, he got third overall at the round tables and was the first traitor to be eliminated. I was excited at first to see that Bob the Drag Queen was selected as a traitor because I thought his personality, his charisma, his sense of humor, his charm, I felt like those were all things that were going to lend themselves well to being a good traitor. It became immediately apparent that he did not want to listen to a single fucking thing that anybody other than maybe Danielle had to say. He would shut Carolyn down. He wouldn't want to listen to Boston Rob. He just basically wanted to murder whoever he wanted to murder because he wanted to quote unquote look chaotic, when in fact sometimes the decisions that were made didn't really make a lot of sense and the plans he was trying to formulate didn't really pan out in the way that he wanted, and then he couldn't pivot as a result. He also just said a lot of stupid shit that got him and the other traitors in trouble. I mean, no one was talking and he just out of nowhere in front of the whole group was like, yeah, I think one of the late arrivals is definitely a traitor, and I think all of us think that, and one of the late arrivals was in fact Boston Rob, who is in fact a traitor and who Bob the Drag Queen knows is a traitor because Bob the Drag Queen is in fact also a traitor. It's like he's just fucking saying things to fill silence, and for what? And then he said he didn't even remember saying it, which is like, I guess that's just an extrovert for you, just saying whatever the fuck and then just blacking out when you're saying things. He also just didn't have the ability to adapt in situations where he's getting called out. He was called out by Dylan in episode 3 and he just deflected and called him names the whole time, and then he was called out by Boston Rob in episode 4 and then continued to call them names rather than pointing out reasons why he isn't a traitor. He just really wasn't good on his feet, basically because he couldn't actually regulate what he was saying in a given situation. He said something stupid, got called out for it, and then got eliminated because he couldn't adapt. So yeah, we want to talk about how everyone else was a bad traitor, but Bob the Drag Queen was arguably the worst. Speaking about Boston Rob, hold on. I wanted to adopt the look. I wanted to put on the look. This is of course not a Boston hat because I feel like my scalp would burn all of the hair out of its follicles if I put a Red Sox piece of attire on my body. This is of course a Guardians hat. Go Guards. Boston Rob, he has definitely a very decorated history on reality television. I had a history with him watching him on The Amazing Race as a child, so I kind of hated him from that, but now seeing him as an adult, I'm like, he's fine, whatever, I don't fucking care. I do think the producers inherently put him in a bad situation by putting so much fucking attention on him very early on in a way that no other contestant had attention put on him. He was the only contestant that had the ability to come back into the contest by having another person vote someone else out so that Rob could take their place. He was also then actually brought back into the competition after people voted for him to not join alongside Derek and Wes, and he was brought back in as a traitor because they sealed his fate by deciding that they didn't want to bring him back. It's like a convoluted way to incorporate him in, but in a unique way that no one else experienced, so it just automatically put everybody on alert a little bit with him. But he also did a lot of things wrong. I really took issue with how he played this season. This season, Boston Rob was very reactionary. He would take people out only if they said things about him. He wasn't very proactive in throwing names out there like I think he would if he was a faithful. And while I did just talk a lot of shit about Bob the Drag Queen, I will say to his credit, he did a really good job of not changing his personality from when he was not selected as a traitor yet to actually being a traitor. And I think that Boston Rob definitely didn't make that transition, because I think he would definitely be like leading the charge much in the same way that Wes and Derek were. He was just like leading the charge only in response to people that wronged him, which definitely seems very much like traitor behavior. Boston Rob, I think, also really sealed his fate in a way by how he got rid of Bob the drag queen. The way that Bob the drag queen just kind of came for him for no reason was completely unnecessary, and I would agree that in addition to the ways that the producers put a spotlight on Boston Rob in such a unique way, there are concerns about having yourself put on people's radar for no reason. So I understand wanting to get rid of him, but I also think that Boston Rob should have told Danielle and Carolyn where he was coming from before doing this at the round table. He essentially told them like, oh yeah, everybody really wants to get rid of Bob the drag queen, which categorically was not true. He should have just been like, yeah, I feel threatened, I'm gonna fucking do this, and I'm gonna do this to anybody that does this to me unprovoked. And I would have at least respected the honesty. But the fact that he told them one thing and then at the round table nobody said Bob the drag queen's name when he was telling Danielle and Carolyn, oh yeah, everybody's gonna bring him up, but no one did until Boston Rob brought it up, that makes him look extremely suspicious, and that's not gonna make your traitors want to trust you. Ever since then as well, Boston Rob was just doing anything he could to like survive another day in the castle by getting rid of people that wronged him. And yeah, that is a strategy, and if you want to like play the game of like, oh yeah, people are targeting me, they're trying to frame me to make it seem like I'm the one that's murdering them, like yeah, that's a strategy, but it's also like not a super good one.
Yeah, dude, somebody's trying to fucking frame me.
So I think he just kind of accepted that he wasn't going to win and was just doing anything he could to survive another day. I still think he could have like changed his behavior a little bit to act more like a faithful, so that he seemed a little bit more sincere than just categorically removing every single person that said something bad about him. You can say all you want, yeah, someone's trying to frame me, but if it happens for like the 9th fucking time, how much is somebody really going to believe that? I was going to take the hat off after I was done talking about Boston Rob, but then my hair looked insanely greasy and horrible after I put this hat on my head. So I'm like officially committed to the bit now. This hat's not coming off till the end of the video. Let's now talk about Carolyn as our traitor. Now, I will say, I think Carolyn is probably the best performance of a traitor that we've had thus far. And I know that she didn't make it the furthest in the competition, just given the fact that nobody had her clocked until she fucked up and got eliminated that episode. I think that definitely speaks to the fact that she did a pretty good job, at least first 2/3 of this competition, in not really doing anything suspicious. Even when Danielle was running her mouth telling everybody that Carolyn was a traitor, nobody actually really believed it, and in fact went to Carolyn and was like, yeah, we don't believe what she's saying, but this person is saying this about you. And I think she had a lot of good ideas. I think she was kind of in a situation where maybe she felt talked over and isolated a lot of times by the other personalities in the turret. I understand just emotionally that can be a lot to overcome, and it kind of made Carolyn, I think, feel a little bit defeated by the end of her time on the show. Carolyn's issues as a traitor really just boiled down to the fact that, like I said, no one really seemed to be listening to her and were constantly coming after her, and as a result it just made her feel a little bit emotionally exasperated. Now, I say emotional coming from an emotional person myself, so I'm not trying to like belittle her emotions or her feelings or anything like that, but I do think in some of the ways where Carolyn responded to what Danielle was doing, she let her emotions dictate a little bit more than she should have, and as a result it was like a data point that people returned to when deciding to eliminate Carolyn. There was no actual evidence that Carolyn even really threw out there other than the fact that Danielle was causing chaos by saying her name for no reason. I mean, there was a lot of things at that point that Danielle did that were really fucking suspicious that she very easily could have pointed towards to evidence Danielle's traitorous status, but she didn't, because I think she was just really pissed off and wanted to embarrass Danielle and tell her that she was really serious about calling her out if that's what needed to happen. And of course, Carolyn's critical error came in the episode where she got eliminated, where they had a challenge where the traitors had to like answer certain questions with the remaining contestants in the house, like who's most likely to do this or that. Carolyn wanted to earn a lot of money in this competition, and because in this round she knew the correct answer, she was really pushing for certain answers to go a certain way because she knew the correct answer, even though everybody else seemed to be going in a different direction with a different answer. And it kind of tipped her hand a little bit too much to show that she knew the answers because she was a traitor. Yeah, you want to earn money, but you also want to like stay around long enough to earn said money. I definitely feel bad that Carolyn seemed to not really have the greatest time being a traitor. It seemed like she was a little bit on her own with the big personalities that were in the turret. She definitely, I think, got beaten down towards the end, and maybe that's why she made some of the mistakes that she did, but I think she definitely had a lot of potential to be a good traitor, and maybe if she had a better group, maybe she would have done better. My back is now hurting because I think my back knows that it's time to talk about Danielle. Here's the thing about Danielle. There has been a lot that has been said about Danielle. There's a lot of stuff on Reddit, a lot of discourse, just articles online, people talking and complaining about Danielle, dubbing her to be possibly the worst traitor that has ever existed in the franchise. And you know, I have been endlessly frustrated by Danielle for various reasons in this season. We're going to talk about them. I was trying to rack my brain, trying to figure out what exactly is it about Danielle that is getting people so riled up? What is it about her that is getting people so pissed off? And I think I figured it out. Yes, Danielle has had bad strategies. She doesn't really seem to be as willing to adapt to circumstances. She's just gunning for one thing to work and just banking on it and not wanting to hear other people's opinions. She is definitely not a great actress. She also was like kind of a little bit delusional about her capabilities in this situation. It seemed like she thought that she was like pulling the strings for everything, but when in reality it just seemed like things were happening by coincidence and she was taking credit for it. So yes, there are a lot of things about Danielle that were extremely frustrating. I don't necessarily think people are getting pissed off purely because she's just not the greatest traitor, because we've seen that before, right? I think the problem is that she's not a good traitor, but then the faithfuls are even worse at their job and are just not clocking anything that she's doing and are taking everything she's doing as faithful behavior, which is absolutely batshit insane to me. They're missing some of the biggest blunders that Danielle could possibly make, and they're not bringing it up or discussing it at all.
I wouldn't be surprised if they try to kill him.
Danielle should not talk at breakfast.
Come on, Jeremy. Jerry said my name. That's why I want him in there. Like a peeking. So I'm going to save a housewife.
What are you doing, Danielle?
Okay, Derek. Okay.
What?
I know, Danielle. I was going to fight.
And so Danielle is getting validated. People are getting eliminated that are not traitors. So whatever the hell she's doing is working on these people, so she feels more and more like she's doing a good job. It's like an instant feedback loop of Danielle does something stupid, the traitors are doing something stupid by not acknowledging it, and then Danielle feels validated and continues to do more and more of the same thing. And you just feel like you're watching somebody that's so horrendously bad at their jobs, patting themselves on their back every week, acting like they're fucking crushing it when they're not. Maybe that's just like on top of the fact that Danielle says really rude things. Like that's really truly what got me annoyed.
You do this thing, Carolyn, that I've noticed, acting silly and dumb.
Oh my God.
And you do that a lot. You Forrest Gump a lot.
So in conclusion, yes, Danielle is annoying, and yes, I will forever call out the fact that she said really rude things and treated Carolyn, I think, pretty disrespectfully throughout the entire season. But I don't want to sit here and like shit on Danielle and say that she was the absolute worst player that ever existed. I think she was a bad player who was also coupled with some of the worst faithfuls that ever existed, and that together created the perfect storm of a horribly frustrating situation that resulted in people just kind of taking it out on Danielle. So yes, she's bad, but I don't think she's quite as horrible as everybody is making her seem. She's just like kind of run-of-the-mill bad. I just spent a long time talking about all the ways that the traitors this season were frustrating. And when I say the traitors, I don't necessarily lump Brittany into that group. She was put in a bad situation by getting recruited by Danielle and did the best that she could, all things considered. I think the way that the traitors played overall was a fucking mess this season, and when Brittany got inserted into that situation, she just kind of had to make do with what she had. As far as the original traitors go, fucking nightmare. I would be like absolutely miserable if I had to be amongst this group of people in the turret. I pray for the cameraman that might have had to stand in that little tower with them as they were declaring war on each other. As bad as that was, however, I would venture to say, for me personally, the faithfuls of this season somehow felt more frustrating and like maddening to watch as the season progressed. And that's really truly saying something, considering the fact that the faithfuls were the ones that won this. I mean, I was happy to a certain extent to see that they did win, but then after like a couple minutes, I was like, wait, do they really deserve to win, though? Because they kind of sucked the entire season. There was so much evidence this season, more so than any season that I've actually really seen from the traitors, of the traitors doing traitorous things. One of the complaints that I have about the show in general is that, especially early on in these seasons, there's not a lot of stuff that you can objectively point to somebody as being faithful or not. It's always just kind of going off of a vibe that you might catch with somebody, or somebody maybe misspeaking at an opportune moment that gets, you know, brought up later at the round table and they get eliminated. But like this season was different because there were so many messy things that the Traitors did, and yet in almost every circumstance the Faithfuls like were presented with this information, or it like occurred before their very eyes, and they did like fucking nothing with it. I understand that we get to see things from a vantage point that others that are on the show that are Faithfuls don't. I also understand that we get like a curated perspective that the Faithfuls don't, so maybe there's like context that's cut out that makes things like less suspicious than they were presented to us when we get to see them. But there were also some instances where I'm like, I don't know what editing could have possibly done to this to make it not suspicious. You know, like I just, the events and how they transpired, I don't know what could have also have happened that got edited out that would make it less insane that somebody didn't pick up on the fact that this was suspicious. For example, in episode 4, Gabby legitimately walked into a room and saw Carolyn and Danielle walking out of a secret room. Later that night, it was revealed that the Traitors got together in secret at some point in the castle to determine who was going to go in the coffin. Gabby brought it up at breakfast. They gave some half-assed excuse as to what actually happened, and then Gabby's like, oh, damn, I thought that was a clue, but yeah, I just gotta take what they said at face value.
I thought I had a clue, debunked immediately.
Meanwhile, other people are getting eliminated for smiling wrong. Traitor! If you have objectively evidence of wrongdoing or suspicious things, and you're over here eliminating people because their vibe is off in response to something when you're on a reality TV show and people's vibes just might be off in general because they're competing under weird circumstances, like how... It became a little bit like brain melting at a certain point. There's also, I think, the issue with this season with the Faithfuls in particular of having reality television stars and having people from like overlapping franchises coming into play in a way where it made the Faithfuls not really pay attention so much to like the things that were occurring in the show and paying more attention to like the history they had with everybody going into the show. Tom Sandoval was like the biggest example of this season. I know that he's kind of a hated person in the Bravo universe. He cheated on his girlfriend with his girlfriend's best friend, which is a horrible thing to do, and I don't like cheaters, so I do not endorse that behavior in any capacity. That somehow, though, translated with, because he wasn't a good guy coming into this game, to everyone who was a Bravo celebrity voting for him to get banished, every single roundtable, regardless of anything that he did or anybody else who was actually a traitor did. It was just like, yep, you know, fuck Tom Sandoval, let's get him the fuck out of here. And I don't think it was because, like, they're just like, I just think he's an unproductive person, let's just eliminate him. It was like, no, I hate you, and because I hate you so much, you are a traitor. And it happened in so many critical votes where if they had just like looked at what was happening and actually used a couple bits of common sense to vote in the correct way, the entire trajectory of the game could have been completely different, but they just wasted their votes on Tom because they hate him. That kind of beef like sometimes adds a complex layer to maybe enhance in some situations the trajectory of the show, but I think with this season in particular, there were so many situations where the Faithfuls were just getting so fucking caught up in the history that they had with other people outside of the Traitors that it was making it impossible for them to actually see what was happening. Another example of this was like people giving Brittany a really hard time for voting Danielle out. They're like, why would you do that to her? You know, you already betrayed her like several years ago on Big Brother. Like, why would you do that to her again? This isn't a friendship competition. I understand you want to conduct yourself with as much dignity as possible. Like, don't be an asshole to people. Brittany was like very clearly upset about what happened. She voted for Danielle to protect herself. Yes, I understand that can create a fun dynamic, and having people with history with each other can sometimes be interesting to see manifest in new shows, but I think this season the Faithfuls got way too caught up in it, and as a result it just made them make such unbelievably frustrating decisions that it became hard to watch after a certain point. I think also one of the contributing factors to the Faithfuls being frustrating this season was Boston Rob's strategy and how he was protecting himself this season, specifically with getting rid of anybody at all who would mention his name in any capacity throughout the competition. It is a choice, you know, it's a strategy that any traitor in any season has at their disposal to get rid of somebody that's a threat to them. It's usually not one that people like to employ because it makes you look really fucking suspicious. In doing so, Boston Rob happened to get rid of any single Faithful that had any bit of common sense and critical thinking. So it just made the show leave you with a bunch of Faithfuls that I wasn't even confident knew the rules of the game. There were a couple exceptions, and, you know, I know that people performing under pressure like this, like, I'm not saying I could necessarily do better, but I think the fact that Rob was able to just get rid of whoever he wanted, and in doing so got rid of anybody who's actually could be good at the game, we were left with just a bunch of people who were just doing whatever the fuck. It's part of the game, but it was just annoying that it happened along with celebrities, and the celebrities that happened to be left were, like, really, really, really not good at this game. I've talked a lot of shit about this show. I've talked a lot about the traitors sucking. I talked a lot about the faithful sucking. But as much shit as I've said about the faithfuls just now, I have to hand it to them. They did win at the end of the day. In preparing for this video, I put together a couple statistics of how successful each of our winners ended up being in terms of their voting patterns throughout the season. And I wanted to share them with you because I feel like it's a good way to kind of illuminate the points that I want to discuss in my final reason for why season 3 Traitors is very frustrating to me and kind of why I get very aggravated by the show in general. And by aggravated, I mean like not actually like mentally. It's fine. We're taking it with a grain of salt. It's all fine. We're good. I'm not actually upset. We're fine. Looking at the voting patterns, 3 of our contestants voted 11 times. Ivor voted 10 times because in the second last roundtable, he was up for elimination and tied with Danielle with the most votes. So the tie-breaking vote, he was not allowed to participate in that, so he has 10 votes. Everyone else has 11. Dylan and Gabby had the best track record this season, so they had 6 of the 11 times that they were able to vote. They voted correctly for a traitor. Ivor voted for the 10 times that he was able to vote for a traitor successfully. And Dolores, coming in last place, only voted twice of the 11 times successfully for a traitor. Now, here's the thing. Numbers don't lie. There's a certain objectivity to math. You know math, right? There's something about that less than 20% success rate that Dolores had for picking out traitors. And I will say the second of 2 successful traitor votes she had was at the very end for getting rid of Brittany. How the fuck are you able to like not really have a successful track record for voting for a traitor throughout the competition, not really having any idea of what's going on, let's just say, because you're not voting for the correct person at any given moment, and yet you are able to win? So it kind of got me down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out like what the hell you're exactly supposed to do to be successful in this game. Like, what is a strategy that you can employ? Because it seems, for me personally, this show kind of rewards you just kind of like chilling and not really doing a whole heck of a lot. Putting in effort one way or the other is just going to get you eliminated. There's different approaches that you can have to protect yourself in this competition. One thing you can do is get a shield. Shields allow you to be protected from murder. If someone tries to murder you when you have a shield, nothing happens. You don't get eliminated. No one gets murdered that night, which is great. When you get a shield in a competition, typically it's during the money-making portion. Sometimes it's a matter of luck, sometimes it's a matter of skill. So you might get a shield, right? You could also present yourself as being valuable enough to the traitors to not get murdered. I was watching season 2 yesterday, and somebody mentioned something about CT being really valuable to the traitors because he's really good in the money-making portion. It's advantageous to the traitors to keep someone like that in who is good at doing tasks. Voting alongside the traitors as well, that's a good way to be invaluable as well, to make it seem like you're their ally. You also can be controversial enough to be used as a shield for the traitors. So like if you're running your mouth and like throwing people's names out there and people might see you as somebody that could be banished, traitors might want to keep you in the competition because you're just going to get banished anyway, so why waste a murder on you? So there's certain ways to like make yourself seem viable enough to not waste a murder. But at the same time, you also have to balance the reality of being faithful enough to not get banished. You can't really be seen as leading the charge against somebody too aggressively because of course that might mean, because we don't have a lot of evidence all the time, that you could be seen as somebody suspicious and get murdered. You can't really be seen as having like too much of a quiet disposition. You can't be like too under the radar because then people are going to pick you out based on, prior history that we've seen from the show. But you can't be way too outspoken because that might seem like somebody who's trying to manipulate the situation as a traitor. You kind of have to go with the flow, but like not too much, whatever the hell that means. And that's an insanely subjective standard that can vary from person to person. In other words, you do not really need to know what the hell is going on. You can kind of just be friends with somebody who incidentally happens to be a traitor and also have a banal enough personality where like you're not worth killing, but you're also not worth putting up for banishment. So you're just kind of fucking there, and that carries you far enough along to the end of the competition. And to me, that doesn't necessarily seem like the most engaging show. It really is illuminated in this season in particular, where you have people like Derek and Wes, and believe me, I thought Wes was a fucking asshole.
Fuck all you guys.
As a contestant in the show, they correctly identified that Rob was a traitor, and they were very aggressive in their style of like bringing this out to the group. They were laying out all the evidence, they were leading the charge. Wes did lead the charge on certain people that did end up becoming faithfuls, when it happens, but he was trying to use evidence to suggest why they would be traitors. And he happened to be wrong, but he was leading the charge on a lot of things. That inherently got him eliminated. People were like, yeah, you were saying people's name and it ended up being wrong, so that means you have to be a traitor. Forgetting the fact that statistically there are way more faithfuls than traitors. traitors, so like obviously that can happen from time to time, but we have no other information to go off of, so this is the only thing that we can hang our hat on. Our backwards baseball hat, that is. People that are inherently trying and actively doing their best to pull traitors out, which is like the thing that everybody says that they're working towards, get punished for doing the thing that you're supposed to do on this show. So it begs the question, what the fuck are you supposed to do on this show other than kind of sit and wait for someone else to make that mistake and then get eliminated? Like, is that really what we're supposed to be doing? That doesn't seem fair. I know it's part of like a strategy to make friends with people and do things in more of a tactful way, and I understand that Wes was very abrasive with his personality, so it's not the perfect example, but it just doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem like someone like Dolores should deserve to win. It also just doesn't seem like the show is giving you good incentive to get traitors out early, because that means that the traitors could just recruit somebody else. So even if you do get a traitor out, they're just going to replace it with somebody else, and you're going to have even less information about this person because they used to be a faithful and then until recently they're not. It's almost like the show is incentivizing people to just sit back and do nothing and just kind of be the most middle of the road person possible, and that's the person that deserves to win. But the people who are actively putting things together and correctly calling out information and correctly identifying and solving things in the game that's supposed to be strategic get eliminated like 5th episode. I'm just like kind of racking my brain as to what show this show wants to be. If the show was like presenting itself to be that, and it was a little bit more honest about the fact that this is the strategy that you need to employ, I would be a little bit more on board with that. However, Traitors doesn't really present itself like that, or at least most of the contestants don't recognize that as a strategy or something that we're trying to do at all. The show is constantly trying to jam down your throat, like, you gotta get the traitors out, you gotta get the traitors out. Even at the very beginning of the seasons where it's like statistically not that likely that you're gonna get a traitor out right away, especially when there's no evidence to point to anything. People are beating themselves up and like pounding their fists on the round table like, God damn it guys, we can't keep doing this, we gotta get the traitors out so that we can win. That's not what's gonna happen, because if you do that, the faithfuls are just gonna get recruited to become a traitor. Like, they're gonna have the opportunity to do that because the producers are never gonna let the show end by the 5th episode, assuming that you get everybody right back to back to back. The show is trying to push the narrative that everybody's goal is to find a traitor as soon as possible, but realistically that can't happen because they're just gonna keep plugging more people in. So it's incentivizing you to not do that. Whenever anybody says anything about making a deal with a traitor or seeing yourself aligned with somebody who ends up being a traitor, it's automatically taboo, and it's like, oh no, we don't do that, we're gonna try to find the traitors. It's like no one actually recognizes the fact that it's not incentivizing you to do that. So long story long, the show seems like it doesn't really know what it wants to be. It's saying on the one hand, like, yeah, it's a mystery and you're trying to figure everything out, but it's really not set up to do that or to sustain that kind of like narrative. It seems like the producers and the contestants on the show don't really realize it yet, and it's just essentially wasting the faithful's time. So what exactly is the benefit or the point of being on the show? I'm not entirely sure. So I feel like I complained quite a lot on this video, and I will say, like, I do like this show a lot this season. Just I didn't really resonate with it maybe as much as I did with other seasons, but I want to kind of finish this video without bitching quite as extensively as I had for the last 25 minutes or however long this video is going to be. So I want to kind of just talk about little random other observations that I enjoyed about this season and just things that I wanted to bring up and mention because it's my channel and I can do whatever the fuck I want. I wanted to just talk a little bit about Wes. I have never had the displeasure of seeing him on any other reality television show that I've been aware of. I think he was on The Challenge. You know, like I said, Wes's personality was very aggressive and over the top. I know that there are players that are like that. There are shows that call for that kind of personality. It just kind of killed me every single time he would be like, I'm like the most successful reality television show contestant that's ever existed, and like I definitely feel like the housewives don't know who I am. It's like, okay, well the housewife won and you didn't, so like what the fuck are you to say? I mean, obviously I just talked for like 15 minutes about why she didn't deserve to win, but like that's not the point. Like, you should have known if you were that good of a reality television show contestant, Wes, maybe you could have like put the brain cells together to realize that this show isn't about being right all the time. It's about, you know, earning people's favor. But maybe like the actual best reality television show contestant would have put that together. I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying. I also want to just acknowledge the fact that Dylan Efron is probably one of my favorite new people that I've ever seen on reality television. I got the same energy from him right off the bat as Pilot Pete from season 2, but like a more earnest Pilot Pete. I truly feel like Dylan Efron is here for TRR. He is for the right reasons, just here wanting to solve a mystery, and I think that's really endearing and amazing. He did have his moments at times where I feel like he was blinded by certain things, but like that's every contestant on the show that's ever existed. I feel like overall he did a decent job at clocking some traitorous behavior. I was happy that he won. I wasn't necessarily thrilled that everyone else won. I want to just give a shout out to the fact that people were comparing Ivor to a piece of British furniture.
Here's what Ivor and I have in common. Literally nothing. He's like furniture.
And Gabby Windy was talking about him openly as if he had already been eliminated. I guess that's kind of a strategy that you need to employ, being somebody that kind of flies under the radar to the point where people think that you don't exist anymore, so they forget to murder you or banish you. I thought that shit was really funny, though. I want to kind of talk a little bit about Tom Sandoval. Now, I was aware of the Scandoval situation through cultural osmosis. I knew of Lisa Vanderpump, obviously, from The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but I had no earthly idea what Vanderpump Rules was about. I did watch the 3-part reunion following Scandoval because I was so curious as to what the fuck was going on. I did not like Tom Sandoval going into this season. I did, however, kind of fall in love with him a little bit, just purely in the context of this show after watching him on Traitors. He is one of the most chaotic people that I've ever seen on reality television. I truly, though, appreciate the fact that he actually thought he was in a castle trying to solve a murder. It seemed like he was legitimately thinking like someone from Scotland government came and recruited him to this castle to try to figure out who was killing everybody in said castle. But he really was entertaining and fun in an endearing way, and while yes, I still think it is abhorrent and horrible that he cheated on his girlfriend in the way that he did, I thought in the show itself I was charmed and I was delighted by the moments of levity and humor that he brought.
Not great. Look like an inmate.
Faithfuls like Bob the Drag Queen. I feel good about Carolyn.
Lord Stag, give me answers.
Generally speaking and historically, girls are better cheaters than guys just because they have better social skills.
That came out your mouth? Oh my God, I said traitors, sorry.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about my man, Alan Cumming. I just want to kind of shout out the fact that I think he's one of the best reality television hosts that I've ever seen on any reality show that I've watched. He definitely brings an element of camp, theatrics, and over-the-topness to this season in a way that I don't think any of the other hosts from the franchises that I've seen have brought. And the fact that he travels with a dog, like I would totally do that with my cat if I was allowed to do that and I was a famous host. Also, his outfits this season, some of the best that I've seen in the franchise. Going off of the same conversation of fashion, though, kind of in the opposite direction, I don't know what the fuck everyone's fashion sense was this season. Everyone had some of the most bonkers looking hats that I've ever seen in the seasons that I've watched. Everyone's got a fuck ass hat. Even Boston Rob is wearing like a velvet blazer versus a regular blazer, like he had to jazz it up. Everything is just so over the top, but it doesn't look good. I mean, everybody just looks so fucking bonkers. The hats in particular were just killing me every season, and I know this is a strange time for me to criticize people's hats when I'm dressed like Boston Rob right now, but I just kind of wanted to mention the fuck ass hats. This doesn't have anything to do with the faithfuls, but I just kind of wanted to mention it because, again, it's my video and I can say whatever I want. I really wish this show would do more to make the money portions of the competition matter just a little bit more. I will say this season did have a couple moments where like the Traitors made it interesting, if for no other reason than because they were really bad strategists. Danielle on episode 5, when she was refusing to give herself a shield twice, like that definitely made that portion of the episode interesting, but it wasn't because of anything the producers did. It was because Danielle is a bad strategist as a traitor. It doesn't have anything to do with like clues or people sussing people out. It's just like, oh, celebrities are working towards, you know, a common goal of earning money for themselves. I wish it had more opportunities to like present traitorous behavior or present faithful behavior. And I know this is like maybe just what the US does. I've heard that other seasons there's other opportunities in those portions for the traitors to do traitorous things. It might just be the US versions that I've seen, but I just wish those sections would be a little bit more like interesting than not really that interesting at all. Hi everyone, it's me, 2 months after I filmed the first batch of footage that you have watched thus far. I am in a new room, I have a new microphone, and I am filming on my new phone. And I also just turned 30, so it's just basically like a very, very brand new KitKats 385 right now. But I don't know why I'm bothering with pleasantries right now. We've already been chatting for the past 45 minutes or so. So I wanted to hop on here a couple months after filming the first batch of footage to kind of provide some updates and context regarding some of the things we've already talked about in this video. Now, throughout season 3 of Traitors, we have heard a lot of reference to some sort of betrayal that occurred between Brittany and Danielle in a prior season of Big Brother. Something relating to Big Brother reindeer games in and of itself sounds like a fucking fever dream, but I promise you it is something that actually did air on primetime television. And I wanted to know what exactly happened. After watching Big Brother reindeer games, that's right, I did go and watch Big Brother reindeer games, I have to say that I have some thoughts, because I feel like there is a lot of context that Danielle did not include in the circumstances regarding that first betrayal that I would like to now share with you. Does it matter really ultimately at the end of the day? Does any of this really matter? Traitors did go off the air like 2 months ago and they're already talking about the cast for season 4. Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter, but it matters to me, and that's kind of, I guess, really what matters at this point. So let me just kind of get this out and then I can just forget about it, okay? Big Brother Reindeer Games is like a miniature all-star Christmas-themed version of the very famous television series Big Brother. There's a lot of concepts going on in this particular show, but just bear with me here. I'm not like the biggest Big Brother fan. I've seen like part of one season and then of course Big Brother Reindeer Games, so maybe if somebody who's like a huge super fan of Big Brother can explain to me the appeal in the comment section, I would greatly appreciate it. So in Big Brother Reindeer Games, we have a bunch of different like all-star contestants, including Brittany and including Danielle. They weren't previously on the same seasons as each other, but they're in this Reindeer Games thing together. Throughout the first couple episodes of Reindeer Games, Brittany and Danielle were like, you know, I would say they're kind of friends. Like, they're not like the closest. They each kind of have people I think that they're closer to than they are to each other, but they identify themselves as being in a bit of an alliance. I will also just say, as a first point of contention, while yes, they were in an alliance with each other, every single fucking person in this season of Big Brother Reindeer Games, I gotta find a better way to say that because it's like a lot to say every time I say it. Every single contestant in this season of the show was like in an alliance with each other. There was like some contestant, I don't even know if they know what an alliance actually is, because everybody was in alliance with anybody. So they were in an alliance with each other, but they also had other overlapping alliances with other contestants. In the third episode of Big Brother Reindeer Games, we had the coveted Santa's Workshop or something. It's like the elimination round. I don't know. Everything is Christmas themed and it's weird. Like I said earlier in this video, there was a hamster wheel, a human-sized hamster wheel, like a gigantic one, right? Because it's Christmas themed, there's a big fucking snowflake in the middle of it, and the snowflake is like a maze. And the object of this elimination round is to get this little red disc that's caught in the maze to the center of the snowflake before the time runs out. Now, the first person that is unsuccessful in doing this task gets eliminated. So the first person who goes, which happened to be Ariana Grande's brother, who apparently is like a big player in the Big Brother universe, he had 5.5 minutes to go. And then the next person that goes gets 4.5 minutes, and then it goes down by 1 minute each time. The first person that went was Frankie Grande, and he had 5.5 minutes, but I believe he was able to do it in under 3. So it is possible, first of all, to do this maze in under 3 minutes. So the next person to go is a person by the name of Xavier, who is very intelligent, very well respected by a lot of the people on the cast, and very physically fit. Everybody assumed that he had no problem doing it in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Xavier did manage to do it, but he had less than 30 seconds on the clock when he completed the task. So a lot of people, including Danielle and Brittany, were under the assumption that whoever was now going to have to go with 3 minutes and 30 seconds was effectively screwed, because if Xavier can't do it, then who can? Even though Frankie Grande just fucking did it, but whatever. Trying to appeal to Xavier to like help him decide who he's going to select to go up next, both Brittany and Danielle went to Xavier and told them that the other one should go. So Brittany was going and saying Danielle should go next, and then Danielle was going and saying the same thing to him, saying, Brittany can't do it, make her go, and then we can just end the game. While yes, Brittany was appealing to Xavier to throw Danielle under the bus effectively, Danielle was also doing the same fucking thing. Here is the kicker. Not only were Brittany and Danielle in an alliance with one another, Danielle was also in an alliance with, among other contestants, Xavier. And in an effort to not throw Danielle under the bus and protect her essentially from getting eliminated, Xavier decided to go with Danielle's suggestion and have Brittany go up next. They specifically stated when they decided to put Brittany up there that they felt bad because they're essentially sending her to certain death. Their words, not mine. They knew and had the intention of putting her up there to kind of sacrifice her because they didn't think she was going to be able to do it. Well, plot twist, motherfucker. Brittany actually did manage to do this whole task within the 3 minutes and 30 seconds timeline. She was actually able to do it with over 1 minute left, which kind of makes me wonder what the fuck this Xavier person was doing. So Brittany managed to go next, and she was trying to determine who she should send up since she successfully did this task. She was about to accept the volunteering of one of these contestants by the name of Taylor. She was like, I think I could probably do it in the 2.5 minutes. I'll just do it so I don't have to do it later with less time. Brittany was about to accept this, you know, volunteering when Frankie Grande comes over and says, oh yeah, by the way, I found out who was throwing your name out there to go. It was Danielle telling Xavier to do that. So she basically got intel that Danielle was the one that initially tried to get her sent home. And because she had this information and knew that she was kind of getting sacrificed or tried to get sacrificed, but she overcame, Brittany decided that she wanted to put Danielle up just because she felt like she couldn't trust her anymore.
Decided to send Danielle to Santa Showdown.
I don't understand why she did what she did.
My whole point being in explaining this, yes, Brittany's actions in volunteering Danielle to go into the fucking hamster wheel directly resulted in Danielle going home. However, Danielle very conveniently forgets to mention that she tried to throw Brittany under the bus in the prior round, and the only reason why Brittany didn't go home was because she was successful in overcoming the sabotage. So the fact that Danielle is like in the Traitors, sitting there and playing victim and acting like Brittany out of nowhere blindsided her and like did this ultimate betrayal that she can't forgive her for is kind of a bunch of bullshit. It's a victim complex, and you kind of see that with Danielle pretty much every time something happens in the season of the Traitors. She does something that's rude, and then somebody gets upset and kind of gives it back to her, and then Danielle gets upset like, why are you giving this to me? Why are you still mad at me?
How could you do this to me? Question mark.
Now, I will say, watching Reindeer Games, it seems like a lot of the contestants from Big Brother really look up to Danielle and they really respect her and like her. And you see a lot of that in the Traitors as well. It seems like outside of reality television, she seems like a nice person, other than what she said to Carolyn at the round table. I wanted to kind of bring that up because it definitely gives a lot more context. I used to feel bad for whatever it was that happened to Danielle when I was watching the season of the Traitors. Now I really don't feel quite as bad. I feel like she kind of doesn't know how to take shit when she gives plenty of it. Alright, so that was a lot of talking about Traitors Season 3. I don't think I want to think about this show in any capacity for a little while, at least until Season 4 starts, you know, getting into production. That's going to be it for me. That's really all I have to say. I think I've said everything that I or any other human being has ever wanted to say about this show. And now we can move on. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to like, comment down below what you thought about Traitors Season 3, what you want me to talk about next. Like I said, I'm always looking for good suggestions of what to talk about. I have a lot of projects that I want to discuss in 2025. I already have like 4 or 5 things that I've been outlining and getting in the works, so this is going to be, I think, a really fun year for me. The next video, like I said, is going to be talking about Only Murders in the Building Season 4, and then at that point, we'll see what makes the most sense to talk about next. So yeah, anyways, until then, I'm going to go pay attention to my cat, because otherwise she's going to murder me in my sleep, so bye.